Hello everybody and welcome to The Hobby Musician. Now if this is your first time to the channel, we're so glad you're joining us, and don't forget to click that subscribe button below. Now I'm so excited about today's episode because this is our channel's very first viewer requested episode. Now to get you caught up, last season we put out a video where we walk you through the steps on how you can take basically about $10 in an afternoon at home and how you can make custom molded tips for any in-ear monitors that you might be using. Now that video got such a great response from you guys, and we're so thankful to all the folks who watched it. But as we were going through the comments, we noticed that some additional follow-up questions were popping up. So what we're going to do is we're going to address one of those questions and kind of give some more information, some more experience and impressions of how these tips work. So I want to thank Kurt for posting this question, but Kurt was asking, in the video I spend all the time talking about how to make them, but I really didn't spend any time talking about how they perform. And so Kurt was wondering if we could make a video where we discuss how does the bass respond, how does the treble respond, what's the sound like overall. So that's exactly what we're going to do in this video. And as I was preparing for this, there's one additional thing that I want to cover as it relates to these tips. So as we said at the top, we made these tips in that video. So we went through the process. These flesh colored tips are the ones that we made during the video. Now I brought a second set to use as part of the answer. Now you can see these tips have kind of the red, the bright red rubber, and then the flesh colored ones are the ones we made in the videos. Now about 2 years ago I started using, this was my first set of in-ear monitors. These are the Mi Audio M6 Pros. Now we also posted a video last season where we talked and we used these two sets of earbuds as a cost ratio quality comparison. And one of the things that we found out is I started using, these are very inexpensive, affordable in-ear monitors. And this was the first set of rubber tips that I made. But again, this was years and years ago before we started the channel. After we started the channel, I actually obtained and got a new set of in-ear monitors, but because they were new and they were slightly different, I couldn't use the old tips. So we used these as the basis for making that video. Now to answer Kurt's question, one of the things that at least has been my experience, when it comes to describing the bass response or the treble response or the sound quality, I want to make it clear that everything I've experienced using these rubber tips doesn't change whatever the earbuds were putting out in the first place. Now let me emphasize that. When I compare the sound of the M6 Pros to the 425s, one of the things I notice is these M6 Pros, they have a very loud bass frequency. So the bass end of the spectrum is very loud in the M6 Pros. However, when I started using the 425s, I noticed that the bass frequencies seemed a little more compact. They seemed a little more focused. Not quieter necessarily, but tighter in the 425s. Now, I say all that just to emphasize the point that when I made the rubber tips to go on the M6 Pros and when I made the rubber tips to go on the 425s, the rubber tips didn't change that. So if you're considering trying this DIY kit kind of method for your own, one thing that at least I can say has been my experience is that you shouldn't experience too much change at all in the overall sound quality. Now the one additional thing that I wanted to add to this is, although the sound quality, the loudness or the softness of the trebles and the mids, all that kind, the sound quality never changed when I started using these custom molded tips. But where I perceived the sound did change a little bit, how present the sound seemed. Now to best explain this, I would say, imagine just a normal situation. If you put two speakers way out in front of you and you were listening to music or some kind of noise, now it takes time for that sound to leave the speaker, travel through the air, and get to your ears. And your brain then picks up the signals it's getting from your left and your right ear, and it processes that and then determines some kind of picture. It gives you a sense of where that sound is, a soundscape. Now, if you were to slightly turn your head and you're listening to the same speakers, now you've created a different situation. The sound comes, but because your ears are in a physically different location, the sound might hit one of your ears before it hits another. And your brain is so wonderfully complex, it can process all of that so quickly that it can then use that information to, again, reinforce where that sound seems to be coming from. Now, all of us have had this experience. If you've been to any kind of a big movie theater that has surround sound or some fancy like home theater system, well, we use that image, sound image, to put sounds to make things sound like they're coming from behind us and all this kind of thing. But if you are a user of in-ear monitors, you may have noticed a bizarre situation. As soon as you take those speakers and you shrink them down, put them inside earbuds, and then stick them directly into your ears, now the sound is being generated inside your ears. So your brain is hearing this sound and it's trying to figure out where to put it. Well, if you turn your head, the speakers go with you. So your brain can't put the sound anywhere. And so I know this may sound funny, but my personal kind of image in my head, it's almost like my head seems like it's hollow and the sound is being generated like deep inside in the middle of my head and coming out. Now, if you know me at all, it may not be too hard to imagine my head being hollow, but that's really the image that I get when I use my in-ear monitors. Now, how does this all relate? Getting back to these rubber tips that we were talking about, one of the things that I did notice, not a change in sound quality, but a slight change in sound presence. By blocking out any additional outside noises, one thing I noticed was when I started using these custom fit tips, it seemed to make the sound that was already directly inside my head, it seemed to make it even more present, even more close to me, if that kind of language makes sense. So once again, we really are talking about these tips don't seem to change very much at all the natural, the already existing qualities of these earbuds. They just, at least in my experience, they just kind of help make that sound a little more present, a little closer to you because of the tremendous seal that you can get because they're custom fit to your ear canals. So I hope that helps with this episode, and we want to thank you again for sending us those great questions and great suggestions. And as always, until next time, play on, my friends, play on.